March 16, 2009. 4 o'clock in the morning. Fire crews respond to a call in Largo, Maryland. A Nissan Maxima is burning in the driveway of an empty home on Webwood Court. The flames are so intense they're melting the asphalt underneath the car. The garage next to it has started to catch fire. But this isn't just a stolen car dumped and set ablaze. When firefighters get the blaze under control and look inside, they find human remains in the back seat. The fire had been so severe that they can't immediately identify anything. Then they check the trunk. There's another person. Both victims were unrecognizable. Someone had doused the car in gasoline, placed 2 people inside, and set it all on fire to destroy the evidence. It would take investigators nearly 48 hours to identify the victims, Dolores Dwit and her daughter Ebony. And when they did, they realized something terrifying. This was the second mother-daughter pair killed in this same neighborhood in less than 2 months. Somebody was targeting families in Largo, and nobody knew who or when they'd strike again. Welcome to Unseen Stories. Today we're talking about a case that shook Prince George's County, Maryland back in 2009. A case that had police convinced they were dealing with someone systematically targeting mothers and daughters in their own homes. Now, before we get into what happened, you need to understand something about Largo, Maryland. This wasn't some high-crime area. This was a quiet, middle-class suburb right outside Washington, D.C. The kind of place where neighbors know each other by name, where people wave from their driveways, where parents feel safe letting their kids walk to school. That sense of safety was destroyed on January 26, 2009. Let me take you back to where this all started. Karen Lofton was 45 years old. She worked as a school nurse, and everyone who knew her described her the same way: gentle, no-nonsense, devoted. She had 2 kids. Her son Kian was 20 at the time, and her daughter Carissa was 16. Karen had been divorced from Carissa's father, who lived in Atlanta but stayed close with his daughter. By all accounts, Karen was doing everything right, raising her kids, working hard, keeping her home secure. Carissa was a smart, ambitious teenager. She went to private school and had recently started working part-time at Golden Corral to earn her own money. She was the kind of young woman with her whole life ahead of her. On Sunday, January 25, 2009, Karen and Carissa went to church together. That evening, Carissa went to work her shift at the restaurant. She was last seen leaving around 9 p.m. Karen usually picked her daughter up from work. But that night, for reasons investigators were never able to confirm, it appears she didn't. Detectives couldn't figure out how Carissa got home. Did someone give her a ride? Did she catch a cab? Did Karen pick her up after all? We don't know. What we do know is that at some point between Carissa arriving home and 2:17 a.m., someone entered that house. At 2:17 in the morning, a call came into the Prince George's County 911 dispatch. The caller was Carissa Lofton. She was barely audible. She told the dispatcher that she and her mother had been shot. She needed help urgently. Police responded in under 5 minutes. When they pulled up to the house on South Hall Drive, everything looked normal from the outside. The house was locked. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No kicked-in doors. Nothing to suggest that anything was wrong. But one officer noticed something. There was a side window that was closed but unlocked. With his weapon drawn, he climbed through that window and unlocked the front door to let the other officers in. What they found inside that house was devastating. Karen Lofton was upstairs in her bedroom. She was in the corner. Police believe she was trying to shield herself when she was fatally shot. Carissa was found in her bed, still under the covers. She had been shot too. Both of them were gone. Carissa had made that 911 call with her last bit of strength, trying to get help for herself and her mother. But it was too late. When detectives started processing the scene, they immediately noticed some things that didn't add up. First, there was no evidence of theft. Nothing had been stolen. No drawers ransacked. No valuables taken. So this wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Second, there were no defensive wounds. No sign of a struggle. which meant whoever did this had complete control of the situation. And then there was the alarm system. Karen Lofton was known for being cautious. She always locked her doors. She always set the alarm. But that night, the alarm had been set initially, and then it was deactivated shortly after the break-in occurred. Investigators believed one of two things happened. Either one of the victims turned off the alarm, possibly under duress, or someone who knew how to bypass it did it themselves. Whoever did this either knew the Loftons well enough that they trusted them, or they had studied the house enough to know exactly how to get in and out without triggering the alarm. The method of killing told them something else too. Both women were shot in a calculated manner. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't somebody who panicked. This was planned. Cold. Deliberate. Detectives started building a list of suspects. The first person they looked at was Karen's ex-husband, Carissa's father. He was in Atlanta at the time of the murders, so he was quickly ruled out. Then they turned their attention to Kian, Karen's son. Now, I want to be clear about something here. Kian had just lost his mother and his younger sister. The grief that young man must have been feeling is unimaginable. But investigators have to follow the evidence, and the evidence was pointing to someone who knew the family. Someone who had access to the house. Kian lived in that home, but the night of the tragic events, he wasn't there. He was at his fiancée's house. Detectives brought him in for questioning. His alibi checked out completely. He was cleared. But that meant they were back to square one. The deaths of Karen and Carissa sent shockwaves through Largo. People were terrified. Parents started double-locking their doors. Porch lights stayed on all night. Neighbors who used to feel safe now felt vulnerable. Because here's the thing that scared people the most. There was no forced entry. No obvious motive. No clear reason why anyone would want to hurt this family. If it could happen to the Loftons, it could happen to anyone. Police conducted dozens of interviews. They talked to friends, family members, neighbors, co-workers. They were looking for anyone who might have had a grudge against Karen. Anyone who seemed suspicious. Anyone who didn't belong. But nobody stood out. Weeks went by. The case started to go cold. And then, on March 16, 2009, it happened again. It's 4 o'clock in the morning on March 16, 2009. Less than 2 months after Karen and Carissa Lofton were killed. A 911 call comes in. There's a car on fire in the driveway of an empty home on Webwood Court, just blocks away from where the Loftons lived. Fire crews are dispatched immediately. When they arrive, the Nissan Maxima is fully engulfed. The heat is so intense it's melting the asphalt beneath the car. The garage next to it has started to burn. The smell of gasoline is heavy in the air. This car had been reported stolen from a nearby home just hours earlier. But when firefighters get the flames under control and look inside, they realize this is not just a stolen car that somebody set on fire. There are human remains in the back seat. The condition makes it impossible to immediately identify anything about the victim. They check the trunk. There's another person. Both victims were beyond recognition. Someone had used an accelerant, gasoline, to make sure the fire destroyed as much evidence as possible. Prince George's County Police are called to the scene. This is now a double homicide. Now here's where things get really unsettling. Webwood Court is in the same neighborhood where Karen and Carissa Lofton were killed just 7 weeks earlier. Same general area. Same quiet suburban streets. 2 crimes. 4 victims. All from the same community. People in Largo were terrified. Some started whispering about a serial killer. Others just wanted answers. Even the acting police chief at the time, Robert Hilton, had to admit this wasn't normal. He initially ruled out the idea of a serial killer, but now, with 4 deaths in 2 months, all unsolved, even he had to reconsider. If someone was responsible for all 4, who were they? And how had they managed to commit such terrible crimes and walk away undetected? While investigators were combing through the ashes of that vehicle, they were desperate for answers. The fire had destroyed nearly everything. Fingerprints, DNA, even the most basic identifiers. But they were able to confirm one thing. Both victims were female. Beyond that, everything was still a mystery. They canvassed the neighborhood looking for witnesses. Anyone who might have seen the car being dropped off. Anyone who heard anything unusual. But nobody had seen anything. Just vague mentions of suspicious noises in the early morning hours. Nothing concrete. And time was working against them. As the investigation intensified, police revealed that they were looking into the possibility that the victims were another mother and daughter. A pair who had been reported missing just hours before the car fire was discovered. Let me tell you about Courtney Hicks. It was Sunday night, March 15, 2009, the night before the fire. Courtney had just returned to Largo after spending the weekend with friends. When she arrived at the Largo metro station just after 10 p.m., she texted her mother, Dolores, to come pick her up. But Dolores didn't answer. That was unusual. Her mother always answered. Courtney waited. She sent another message. Still nothing. Eventually, she made her way to the family's home on Cedar Hollow Lane. As soon as she walked in, something didn't feel right. The lights inside the house were on. Her mother's car was parked in the driveway. Ebony's jacket, the one she wore everywhere, was by the front door. Everything looked like they had just stepped out for a moment. But the house was silent. Courtney called out for her mom. For Ebony. Nothing. She checked their bedrooms. Empty. She started calling their cell phones. No answer. That's when the fear set in. She knocked on doors. Asked neighbors if they'd seen her mother or sister. Nobody had. She called the police to report them missing. In that moment, Courtney was alone, standing in the middle of a mystery she couldn't yet begin to understand. Police began investigating immediately. They found Ebony's boyfriend, who told detectives that he had dropped her off at home around 1:30 a.m. Sunday morning, hours before Courtney arrived back in town. He was the last known person to see either Dolores or Ebony alive. Police never named him as a suspect, but now they had a timeline. They had a missing persons report. And within hours, they had two unidentified victims found inside a burning car less than a mile from the Dwit home. The pieces were starting to fall into place. On Tuesday, March 17, 2009, less than 48 hours after the fire, the medical examiner made a positive identification. The two women found inside the car were 42-year-old Dolores Dwit and her 20-year-old daughter, Ebony. Dolores worked as a nurse at a local nursing home. Her sister told reporters that she loved working with the elderly and worked hard to provide a good life for her two daughters. Ebony was described as the life of the party. Someone who made everyone laugh. Someone who just genuinely enjoyed life. But now they were gone. Taken. Just like Karen and Carissa. Another mother. Another daughter. Two families destroyed in the same way. Now, police were hesitant to officially link the cases at first. But the similarities were becoming harder and harder to ignore. Both Karen and Dolores were nurses. Both Carissa and Ebony were young women. One 16, the other just 20. Both pairs were killed in the early morning hours of a Monday. Both lived in quiet suburban neighborhoods in Largo, less than a mile apart. Their homes backed up to cul-de-sacs. Quiet streets. The kind of streets where you'd never expect something like this to happen. Major Andy Ellis with the Prince George's County Police Department addressed the public's growing concern. He said, and I quote, "We have not definitively linked these cases. They have very uncanny resemblances to each other. They occurred close in time to each other, close in distance to each other. We have mothers and daughters. There are very strong circumstantial links, but we don't have anything definitive at this point." But the pattern was clear, and it was unsettling. Police were also learning that the morning the stolen car was set on fire, several strange things had happened across the neighborhood, almost simultaneously. Too much activity in too short a time frame to be a coincidence. A neighbor who lived just across the street from the Dwits told Fox News that their home had been burglarized a few months earlier in December 2008. She recalled that Dolores and Ebony had recently bought a new television and another electronic item. Just a week later, someone broke in through a window and those items were taken. It wasn't an isolated event either. According to police reports, there had been around 40 burglaries in that part of Largo since October 2008. 40. Now, at first, nobody connected the burglaries to the killings. But looking back, it's clear that someone had been watching these homes, studying them, learning their routines. Was the person who committed these burglaries the same person who took these lives? Police did not initially publicly state how Dolores and Ebony died. An autopsy later revealed the cause of death, but the method was different from how Karen and Carissa were killed. Karen and Carissa had been shot. Dolores and Ebony had not. That told investigators something important. If this was the same person, they were changing their approach, adapting, trying to throw police off. Based on the disturbing similarities between the two cases, authorities issued a warning to residents. If you return home and find signs of a break-in, don't go inside. Call the police. Detectives began searching the Dwit home from top to bottom, looking for any trace of evidence. But they weren't just focused on that house anymore. They also returned to the Lofton residence, this time with new questions, new eyes, and the realization that they were dealing with something much bigger than anyone had first imagined. At a neighborhood meeting held not long after the deaths of Dolores and Ebony, a lieutenant with Prince George's County's Homicide Division addressed a crowd of worried residents. He revealed that police were now pursuing at least 30 active leads in the Dwit case, and that the possibility of one person being responsible for both incidents was very much on the table. They couldn't rule it out. Not anymore. He urged residents to be cautious. Keep your doors and windows locked. Pay attention to your surroundings. Be mindful of where you leave your keys for your car and your house. Don't assume safety just because you live in a quiet neighborhood. The Prince George's County Police Department threw everything they had at the case. The entire homicide squad was assigned to work it, along with senior investigators from other departments. They canvassed neighborhoods, knocked on doors, asked residents for DNA samples. They collected over 200 pieces of evidence. And still they had no suspects. They called in the FBI to build a profile, hoping that behavioral analysis could give them something the evidence hadn't. Who was this person? How had they managed to take 4 lives and leave behind so little? And why, out of everyone, had they chosen these 2 families? 4 months, the cases remained unsolved. The community was shaken. Detectives had gathered leads, sifted through burglaries, knocked on doors. But nobody could have guessed that the break in the case wouldn't come from a homicide investigation at all. It would come from a completely separate crime. In May of 2009, just a few months after the tragic events, a gun shop in Woodbine, Maryland called JC Arms was burglarized. Several firearms and other items were stolen. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF, took over the investigation. This was a federal case involving stolen weapons. But what they uncovered would lead them straight into the heart of the mother-daughter cases. According to a special agent with the Baltimore ATF field office, an informant gave them a name: Jason Thomas Scott. He was 27 years old, a part-time UPS employee. He'd worked there for nearly a decade. Scott wasn't on anyone's radar. Not for the deaths. Not for anything. But when ATF agents obtained a warrant and searched his Upper Marlboro home, where he lived with his parents and sister, what they found was far more than stolen guns. Inside Jason Scott's house, investigators discovered a disturbing collection: a dozen firearms, a police scanner, a silencer, a bulletproof vest, BMW keys, and burglary tools, a crowbar, gloves, and a ski mask. Many of the items found matched the descriptions from burglaries in the same Largo neighborhoods where Karen and Carissa and Dolores and Ebony had lived and died. But that wasn't the most disturbing discovery. During one of the searches, investigators found a flash drive. On it were photographs linked to a violent home invasion that had occurred just weeks earlier, on June 13, 2009, in Fort Washington, Maryland. In that incident, A young woman and her mother returned home and found a man inside. He was holding the woman's younger sister. The attacker forced the older sister into a situation where he took inappropriate photographs of her. He then committed a violent crime against her. Police now believe that the man responsible for that attack was Jason Scott. The evidence on that flash drive was damning. Jason Scott was arrested in July 2009. He was taken into custody in a UPS parking lot. He was initially charged with a long list of federal crimes: carjacking, weapons violations, and violent offenses. He never saw freedom again. And while he was being held on those federal charges, detectives from Prince George's County began quietly building their homicide case against him. They believed they had found their man. Not just for the burglaries, not just for the weapons, but for taking those 4 lives. According to reporting, Scott had allegedly been selling weapons out of the trunk of his car. Pistols, silencers, even a machine gun. Some of them were traced back to the very gun store that had been robbed in May. Scott pleaded not guilty. He was scheduled to go on trial for the federal charges in November 2010. But police weren't finished with him yet. What they suspected now, and what they still had to prove, was that Jason Scott wasn't just a thief or a violent offender. He was responsible for killing 4 women. Now here's where this case gets even more disturbing. According to law enforcement sources, Scott wasn't just some common criminal. He was highly intelligent, a calculated offender, someone who knew how to cover his tracks. He had studied forensic science. He read textbooks used by actual investigators. And he allegedly used his knowledge to stay one step ahead of police. That he knew how to clean up a crime scene, how to avoid leaving behind evidence, how to change his methods just enough to confuse detectives and even mislead the FBI profiler assigned to his case. He was, as one investigator put it, brilliant but dangerous. Scott reportedly held 2 master's degrees. One of them was in information systems management from the University of Maryland. His education, combined with his technical skills, made him unlike any suspect Prince George's County Police had ever encountered. How does someone with that much education, that much intelligence, use it to hurt people instead of help them? Police began to piece together a disturbing theory. By day, Jason Scott worked quietly at UPS sorting facilities. He corrected addresses on undeliverable packages. He was described as reliable, efficient, quiet. Nobody suspected a thing. But by night, police believe he was leading a very different life. Investigators alleged that Scott used his computer skills to research law enforcement techniques, forensic protocols, and investigative procedures. He reportedly studied how detectives work, and then he used that knowledge against them. They also suspected that he may have used his access to UPS databases to learn about potential victims, looking up names, addresses, delivery histories. Police began to piece together a disturbing theory. By day, Jason Scott worked quietly at UPS sorting facilities. He corrected addresses on undeliverable packages. He was described as reliable, efficient, quiet. Nobody suspected a thing. But by night, police believe he was leading a very different life. Investigators alleged that Scott used his computer skills to research law enforcement techniques, forensic protocols, and investigative procedures. He reportedly studied how detectives work, and then he used that knowledge against them. They also suspected that he may have used his access to UPS databases to learn about potential victims, looking up names, addresses, delivery histories, the man handling your packages, the person you trust to deliver your mail, potentially using that access to study you, to learn when you're home, when you're vulnerable. It's believed that he also used cleaning agents to wipe down crime scenes. And he started fires like the one that destroyed evidence in the Dwit case, to eliminate what investigators could find. Those who worked alongside Scott at UPS were stunned when the charges were announced. They couldn't believe it. The quiet guy who sorted packages was connected to all of this? But that's exactly what he was. One of the hardest lessons from this case is that evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears a uniform, clocks into work, blends in. Following the ATF raid, Prince George's County Police returned to Jason Scott's home and uncovered even more evidence linking him to a string of burglaries across the region dating back to 2007. But it was the testimony of an accomplice, someone who had helped Scott sell stolen guns and commit burglaries, that truly widened the scope. The man told investigators that he and Scott had carried out a series of home invasions in 2008 and 2009. Police now believed that Scott's crimes were far more extensive and violent than they had ever imagined. According to testimony, Scott and his accomplice, Marcus Hunter, broke into homes across Prince George's County, stealing electronics, cash, and anything of value. They would allegedly case homes for days. Watch the patterns. Know when people left for work, when they came home, when they were most vulnerable, and then they would strike. Evidence uncovered showed that Scott committed at least 25 residential burglaries with Marcus Hunter and occasionally utilized a vacant residential lot in the 1100 block of Drums Hill Lane in Upper Marlboro, Maryland to divide the stolen property. This location became known as the Spooky House among Scott and his associates. And here's where the evidence gets really strong. When investigators searched the Spooky House, they found remnants of a blue sweater. The same type of sweater Ebony Dwit was last seen wearing. They also found something else. Beech tree leaves. The same type of leaves that had been found clinging to Dolores Dwit's jeans when her body was recovered. The Spooky House was surrounded by beech trees. This physical evidence directly linked Jason Scott to the scene where the Dwits were believed to have been held before they were killed and placed in that vehicle. If there was even a sliver of doubt left about Scott's involvement, it was erased when investigators found the weapon used in the Lofton case. A stolen Glock 17. Ballistics macheted it directly to the shootings of Karen and Carissa Lofton. The gun was in Jason Scott's possession. It painted a clear and devastating picture of Scott's crimes. On July 27, 2010, Jason Scott was officially charged with taking the lives of Dolores and Ebony Dwit after a grand jury returned a 7-count indictment. In addition to 2 counts of first-degree felony offenses, Scott was also charged with burglary. If convicted, he faced 2 life sentences. Though investigators strongly suspected that Scott was also responsible for what happened to Karen and Carissa Lofton, and another victim named Vilma Artister, he had not been charged in those cases. Not yet. In 2012, Jason Scott was tried in federal court on the weapons, burglary, and violent crimes that ultimately helped expose the full extent of his criminal behavior. He was convicted and sentenced to 100 years in prison. But the charges related to taking lives, especially those connected to Dolores and Ebony Dwit, were still pending at the state level. In 2013, facing overwhelming evidence and multiple witness statements, Jason Scott entered what's called an Alford plea. Now, for those who don't know what that is, an Alford plea means that he acknowledged there was enough evidence to convict him without admitting guilt to taking the lives of Dolores and Ebony. In exchange for avoiding trial, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. And here's the part that still bothers a lot of people to this day. Pending charges against him for what happened to Karen, Carissa, and Vilma were dropped. He has never been charged with their cases. So let me ask you something. Was justice served? Jason Scott is behind bars for the rest of his life. He's never getting out. He'll die in prison. But Karen and Carissa Lofton never got their day in court. Their names were never read aloud in a courtroom. Their story never got the full accounting it deserved. Prosecutors had to make a tough call. They had to weigh the practicality and the emotional impact of holding multiple trials, especially when Scott was already guaranteed to spend the rest of his life in prison. They probably felt that another trial, with all the costs involved and the emotional toll it would take on the Lofton family, wouldn't really change the outcome in any significant way. I understand the logic, but it still feels incomplete. Didn't Karen and Carissa deserve their own trial? Wouldn't it have brought some form of closure to their family, to their community? These are questions that don't have easy answers. There's another name I need to mention. Vilma Artister Butler. She was found deceased in her Bowie home in June 2008. Her home had been set on fire. Police believe Jason Scott was responsible, but he was never charged in her case either. That's 3 cases where families never got to see charges brought. 3 families who never got their full day in court. How many other families might there be that we don't even know about? Now, I want to talk about what we can learn from this tragedy, because there are lessons here and they matter. Lesson 1. Pay attention to patterns in your community. 40 burglaries in that area between October 2008 and March 2009. That's not normal. That's someone systematically working through a neighborhood. If you notice a pattern of break-ins in your area, report it. Talk to your neighbors. Share information. Don't assume someone else is handling it. Lesson 2. Trust your instincts about home security. Karen Lofton did everything right. She locked her doors. She set her alarm. But somehow someone still got in. This isn't about blaming victims. It's about recognizing that we have to stay vigilant. Check your locks. Update your security systems. Don't leave windows unlocked even if you're home. Lesson 3. Evil doesn't always look like what we think it does. Jason Scott wasn't some obvious threat. He was a UPS employee. Educated. Quiet. Normal looking. That's what makes cases like this so terrifying. We want to believe we can spot danger. But sometimes danger is hiding in plain sight. The person who delivers your packages. The person you see at work. The person who seems completely ordinary. We can't live in fear, but we can live with awareness. Lesson 4. The justice system isn't perfect. Sometimes, even when the right person is caught and convicted, it doesn't feel like justice. Because closure isn't just about locking someone up. It's about acknowledgement. It's about saying these lives mattered. These cases deserve to be answered for. And in the cases of Karen, Carissa, and Vilma, that didn't happen. Prosecutors made a practical decision. But for the families, that practical decision meant never hearing their loved ones' names read in a courtroom. Never getting to see charges brought specifically for what was taken from them. Is that justice? Or is that just efficiency? I don't have the answer to that. But it's a question worth asking. As of today, Jason Scott remains behind bars serving multiple life sentences. He has not been linked to any additional cases since his conviction. But investigators believe there may be more victims. Cases they haven't been able to definitively connect to him yet. He traveled. He was methodical. He studied how to avoid detection. How many other families did he hurt that we don't know about? I want to end this by saying their names one more time. Because their names matter. Their lives matter. Their stories deserve to be told. Karen Lofton, 45 years old. School nurse. Mother. Devoted to her children. Known for her gentle spirit and her dedication to helping others. Carissa Lofton, 16 years old. High school student. Ambitious. Smart. Working part-time to earn her own money. Her whole life ahead of her. Dolores Dwit, 42 years old. Nursing home caregiver. Loved working with the elderly. Worked hard to provide for her daughters. Known for her kindness. Ebony Dwit, 20 years old. Full of life. Made everyone around her laugh. The kind of person who lit up a room. These women were not involved in anything dangerous. They weren't living risky lives. They were simply going to work, going to school, coming home, and loving each other. And someone took that away. The hardest part of stories like this isn't just the violence. It's the silence that follows. The unanswered questions. The justice that feels incomplete. Jason Scott may be behind bars for the rest of his life, but he was never held accountable for all of it. Still, what we can do is remember these women. Say their names with the same love their families still carry. The same grief their community still feels. Their lives were beautiful. Their memories are sacred. And their stories matter. May Karen, Carissa, Dolores, and Ebony rest in peace. This case teaches us something important about the communities we live in. About the people we trust. About the systems we rely on for justice. It reminds us that safety isn't guaranteed just because we live in a nice neighborhood. That evil doesn't always announce itself with warning signs. It also reminds us that when something feels wrong, we need to speak up. When we see patterns, we need to pay attention. When we hear about crimes in our area, we need to take them seriously. Because these 4 women, they were living their normal lives in what they thought was a safe community. And they never got the chance to see danger coming. We owe it to them and to ourselves to stay aware, to stay connected to our communities, to look out for each other. That's the legacy we can give them. That's how we honor their memory. This has been Unseen Stories. If this case affected you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of the importance of community and awareness, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. It helps more people see this story. It helps keep these names alive. Subscribe to Unseen Stories if you haven't already. We're committed to telling the stories that don't get enough attention. The victims who deserve to be remembered. The cases that need to be heard. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Was justice served in this case? Should prosecutors have taken Jason Scott to trial for all the cases? What lessons do you take from this story? And share this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear these names. Someone who needs to be reminded to stay aware, stay safe, stay connected to their community. Karen, Carissa, Dolores, and Ebony didn't get justice in the way they deserved. But we can make sure their stories are never forgotten. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. We've got more stories coming that you need to hear. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, look out for each other. This is Unseen Stories.